Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Adam J. Pestridge, and we're talking all about P3D today. I'd never used P3D versions 1 to 3. I've never used X-Plane, and I don't use FSX anymore. So we're solely talking about P3D version 4 in this whole series. I get a lot of people emailing me. I get a lot of people on Messenger asking me about their sim, about how can you do this, how can you do that. And when the same questions keep reoccurring, I feel it's time to do a video. So I figured, well, let's do an ongoing series, in fact, sort of like a tech support series, you know, and it's not something you're going to have to pay for. I'm not going to move this to Patreon or anything like that. It's totally free. It's totally here on YouTube. If you've got any questions about your sim, leave them in the comments below, and I'll start to do more videos in the future moving forward. But today I'm going to show you how you can maintain 30 frames a second solid in your sim, no matter where you fly in the world or no matter with what plane. And also we're going to go through our CFG files for scenery, for P3D, and we're going to have a look at the settings within the simulator itself. Okay. So this new series, I'm going to call it like P3D Top Tips 2020, and it's just going to be that. It's going to be, what tips can I give you to make your sim the smoothest performance, you know? Not like for the best visuals, not for like to make it look fantastic, but to give it a super smooth silk experience, you know? Because for me, I feel that that's the most important thing, you know, is for you to have an authentic feeling sim first, and then the visuals a second. So if you're looking to up your sim and make great recordings of visual, you know, then this isn't the series for you. We're solely talking about performance here, how to get the best performance out of your sim. And for me, the single one most thing for best performance is to achieve a set frame rate no matter what, you know, no matter what, if you're flying over New York with Dizweki designs, or if you're flying over default Florida, or if you're flying over UK 2000, it's going to be a steady frame rate. And for me, it's 30 frames a second, you know. The monitor I have, the graphics card I have, you know, I work them in combination with my sim, and for me personally, with the hardware I've got, 30 frames a second is the best thing for me. So I maintain 30 frames or as close to 30 as I can, and that suits me. Your sim might be different because it's going to be solely dependent on your hardware. So again, this isn't a best settings video for 2020. They're impossible to do because everyone's got different hardware. Now, in terms of hardware, I would actually say real quick, if you're looking to upgrade your computer, if you're looking to buy a new computer for Flight Sim, always go with the best hardware available, because that will not only give you much better performance, but it will also give you less stress, you know, less likely to crash if you're not making it sweat as much, you know. It'll be more silky smooth if it can run the program on, you know, the hardware. So always try and get the very best, and it's really hard to do that because everything changes so often. You know, I bought my PC back in 2017 and it was the top PC at the time. I run the Chill Blast Nimbus 3 that actually Matt Davies actually put together, and it still runs great now. In fact, it's the same graphics card he uses, but nowadays this is classed as a mid-range machine. You know, it's been superseded by better configurations. But anyway, I digress. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Let's first off have a look at the CFG files. Now, your CFG files, let me get my ugly mush off the screen here so you can just see this. The CFG files are located in your program data folder for Lockheed Martin P3D version 4, and in your app data folder roaming Lockheed Martin P3D version 4. Okay, you've got your add-on CFG file in the app data one with your P3D file, sorry. You've also got in your program data folder your scenery CFG file, as well as another add-on CFG file, and I'm going to tell you the difference between the two. Right, first off, let's start with the add-ons because they're here. So the one in program data, if we bring it up, this is the one that Orbex plays with the most. It's basically a complete list of all your add-ons that you've installed. Now, for me, this isn't a complete list because I have installed add-ons and added them manually to this list, which you really should never really play with this list manually, but I have a little program that does it for me and it's fine. And then whenever I run my Black Marble program here, which I won't run it because my sim is on, and then run my Orbex app as well, it clears off some of the entries here, which is fine because I actually don't have them in my sim when it clears them off, so that it's fine to do that. So this isn't a complete list, but if you've just added your sceneries, or if you've got like for me, Aerosoft, who ask you, do you want to put your scenery and your planes in the add-on XML way, and I say yes, then it'll get added to this file. If not, it'll just get added to your CFG file if it's scenery. So that one's a list of all your add-ons in your sim. Now, this add-ons one is just a list of what's actually going to load from your documents prepared version 4 add-ons folder. So it's all of these ones, okay? Which may not necessarily be all the ones in your sim. It should be, but sometimes it ain't, because Orbex or me, we actually play with these XMLs and actually have more things waiting to go into the sim on standby, but the sim knows that they're there, you know, than what's in this folder here. And what I mean by that is here, if this gets all too confusing, I won't worry about it really. But this is my complete directory of all my XMLs that I've got for photoreal scenery, for airports, and for aircraft. I don't do it for scenery items because they actually need to be layered into your scenery library with a given layer that cannot move. Or if it moves, it needs to be moved with the library itself. And if it's in here, it won't. Anything in your add-ons folder will just simply go on top of your scenery library. And what I mean by that is when we go to the scenery library, all the add-ons here, as you can see here, look at this, Turbulence, Global, you know, the Orbex libraries, all these files here are all on top here. There's none here that's like way down the list down here. Okay, and that's because add-on packages sit on top of your scenery library because they are an add-on. Okay, scenery items here need to be layered in and given a layer number, like this priority number here is like their layer number. Okay, so if I suddenly start moving around, for instance, Germany North, the elevation data from 351 way up here to number 4, it's actually going to start messing things up in Germany. I might not notice it until I fly over Germany, but if you start messing with your scenery library too much, it bites back and your sim won't run as smooth, okay? And also, really, only tick what you're actually going to fly. If you have everything here ticked, you're loading this into your sim every time you go fly. And of course, you're only going to fly in one area of the world at a time, but you're loading in the entire world at a time, which, you know, just untick everything you're not actually going to see in your flight, and your sim will load faster and perform better. Okay, this is all my add-ons in the add-ons folder. Now Orbex, they managed your add-ons for you. Okay, if you've got the version 4 app and you've configured it in a way to use this method, all their products are actually in the add-ons folder, and they've actually assigned everything, even if it's a scenery item, which most of these are, they're not just airports, but they're scenery items as well, like the land class data, wherever it's sitting, there it is. They've actually given it a number in the scenery library, and that number won't move unless it reconfigures your entire library, in which case it will get renumbered and given a new number, and then that's fine. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is, if you put scenery items in this add-on XML route, like Aerosoft have done with Lukla Mount Everest, although it is just an airport, so that's fine. then you're going to run into problems. If you actually use scenery-based items in an add-on XML way, then eventually you're going to run into problems because it's the way the sim is designed. I only do aircraft, airports, and photoreal scenery because they sit on top of the scenery information. And that's the only reason I put them in. Anyway, that's what this file is. This is ones that are purely in the sim now. Okay. The next file in here is your P3D CFG file. Now, a CFG is a configuration file. It's basically an index of lines of code. It's a behavior pattern for your sim. It tells you, the sim, exactly what to do, okay, in terms of what settings to set everything at. And if you start changing this, I always find it's where it actually brings in the most problems. Now, back in 2018, and I've done a video about it, where I've actually changed my CFG file a lot. And I used to put in loads into this thing. I used to even separate these headings here and give it a little bit of distance between each one so I could find things easier. And I used to really play with this thing to enhance it. Then I had a operating system crash and it wrecked everything, and I had to wipe my entire drive, start again, reinstall Windows, reinstall the sim, and that happened last year in 2019. Like, actually no, it was December of 2018. Sorry, and I had to rebuild my P3D CFG file. Now, I didn't put in as many additions to it as I had done previously because I found that I didn't really need to. I think we were on version 4.4 back then, or 4.3. So there were a few things missing from 4.5, which is probably what I was inserting. I don't know. But anyway, last December, I had to uninstall all my flight sim stuff for testing reasons. And when I reinstalled it, this is the CFG file that I've reinstalled with, and I actually haven't gone in here, and I haven't actually touched anything in here. There's not one single line of code that I have changed or added since reinstalling last January, you know? I don't know. It doesn't need it. Like this, my sim performs at 30 frames a second constantly, no matter what I put in it, no matter where I go. And I'm going to show you exactly how to achieve that for yourself using a very nifty trick. But one final thing to say on this P3D file. This works in my sim because of my hardware setup. Your sim has a different hardware setup unless you're running the exact same configuration as me. And this is one thing where one setting is not good for all, because everyone's going to have different PC specs. Okay, therefore their sim is going to behave differently and be capable of different things. You know, somebody with lesser settings than me, or lesser hardware than me, won't be able to have the same settings here in their options tab that I do. But somebody with better hardware configuration than me, because mine's considered as a mid-range machine now, might actually be able to put more settings into their sim. So really, there is not one fix that rules all. It's one fix with the similar hardware settings. That's really what the lesson is here. So if you mess with your CFG file, you know, and you're running the latest hotfix on version 4.5, and you've got a very good machine, I honestly don't think you really need to. You don't really need to touch this at all. You know, if you touch it, you know, it's like it may slow it down. In fact, who knows? But I don't touch mine. And the scenery library. This thing here is so sensitive. If this thing gets muddled up, and it can do, you know, if there gaps happen in the CFG file, or if things are missing, or suddenly the numbers are all out of whack, then you're going to have problems in your sim. This thing is very sensitive, and if you start manually playing with this, like, you know, changing certain things, honestly, it's going to bite back and it's going to wreck your sim. I never have touched, except for now, that scenery CFG. Okay. And that's pretty much it for the CFG files. So how can you get 30 frames a second no matter what you fly in your sim? I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. I run aircraft like PMDG. I have aircraft like Just Flight, Aerosoft. I have aircraft from all different types of manufacturers. Now, a lot of it is actually installed into my sim here by default, and I have to scroll down loads to find it. Now, to be honest, apart from the default aircraft that came with P3D, to be honest, you don't really need your aircraft all in your sim at the same time. It really is wasting resources, computer power, and loading times to have everything installed at once. Like if you're flying 737s only and they're the PMDG 737s, then you don't really need all the other aircraft flying in your sim, do you? You know, if you're using VATSIM, then we're not talking about these models. You've got a completely different set of models to showcase in the sim. So it's like, why would you need all this installed if you're only flying one type of plane? Now, for me, I'm flying loads of different types of planes, so therefore I have loads of different types installed in. Now, this isn't my complete list of airplanes, by the way. These are just the planes that I haven't yet taken out of the P3D folder. This is a list of all my planes, plus what's in here. So, Airbus, Boeing, Carenado, all the way down to the DC-1030 here. So this here is also a list of planes that I fly with. You know, you got the Dash Q400, you know, you got the DC-3, a lot of stuff here, and then what's in here as well. Now, if I want to fly one of these planes, let's say the A340, I just simply move it over using the XML method to this folder, and then it will appear in here in this list. Obviously, if I do it now, it won't because my sim is loaded. I have to do it when my sim is not loaded. But it's very simple. I have loads of planes, but I just don't load them all at the same time. I load what I'm going to fly. Now, there are exceptions to this rule because people like PMDG, Just Flight, I haven't found the way yet to get these out of my sim without breaking the aircraft. You know, I've tried, I've experimented, I've tried to remove all of these, but unfortunately, the way the developers have coded these planes, they've made it to where if you have them running from anywhere but your sim folder, they will just not run properly. They will crash and they will upset your sim, and it's just like, to be honest, guys, it doesn't need to be this way. You know, you can have planes running from another hard drive entirely and it not do this, you know, or have it running from outside of the P3D folder and it not have to do this. I prefer that method than this because simply this is a big list to flick through. I mean, I know I could search here if I want to just go for 747 and then it'll just load the 747s, but, you know, I guess I'll have to do that from now on. But it's like, for me, I feel you don't need to be doing this, guys. You're only doing this to protect yourselves from piracy, and I understand that. Totally get that. But it's to ball like for people like me who want to use an XML route to have a complete list of all their aircraft that they can then load in when they want to fly it. And for me, it saves performance and it saves loading times, you know, and it saves possible sim crashes, you know. That's the only reason I'm talking about this right now, is the sim crashes. But anyway, let's get back to that 30 frames a second. Right. Okay. This is it. This box here, display global settings. Nobody really talks about this. Okay. I don't see people doing videos on this on YouTube, talking about this in forums. Just maybe once in a while. But to be honest, this is the most powerful tool that you have for your sim to give you smooth performance. Okay. It governs everything in these boxes here, in these options, the lighting, weather. This single thing tells all this what to do. Okay. Now, if you want to find out where these profiles sit, if you go to your documents folder, right, and you go to your P3D4.5 files folder, you'll see these CFG files here. And we'll just have a look at this one. This one, it kind of looks like the CFG file from P3D. It's got very similar settings, but it's only got very specific settings. And that's the settings that you see here in these boxes here. Okay, it doesn't really say anything else, and it doesn't, I don't know if it actually works if you put in things that aren't in these boxes. I don't think it'll actually use them settings, but there's profiles that I have for every occasion. So if I'm flying at night with black marble, I have a black marble configuration file, and that's it here. Okay, very particular settings it has. If I'm flying at daytime, just out of, say, Birmingham, and I'm in a Cessna, or I'm in an airplane that's very well coded, or in freeware, then I'll set it to daytime, and that's a generalistic one. That's the one I use majority of the time, you know. Also, I have copied other sort of sim community members like Matt and Rob, because their hardware is very similar to mine, so therefore I can use their profile every now and again and test with it and see if it, you know, does what they say it does, and it does, you know. I also have one for Mega Scenery Earth when I fly with photoreal textures, and if I'm in a PMDG aircraft and I'm flying over a heavily populated city, I also have a PMDG setting, which it's kind of it's kind of like my daytime, but it kind of reduces a few things to allow the airplane to perform the way it should without reducing my frame rates. This one used to say 4K because I used to have a 4K monitor attached. I don't anymore because I use that in the living room, and so I've reduced this down to 2K, but it basically, it brings in 2K textures pretty much like daytime, but it has everything else set to like 4K as if I'm running a 4K monitor. I don't use that at all, to be honest. But if I'm flying day or night, these are the two I mainly use, and then if I fly with photoreal textures, I use that. And you know, swapping these out per flight streamlines your sim to your flight, what you're doing. If you're flying high altitude, 40,000 feet, you know, you're never going to see a building down below. So therefore, this can go right down to none or even sparse. You know, it doesn't need to be on, you know, extremely dense or very dense, because you're never going to see the buildings, you know. Likewise, if you're flying down at 3,000 feet in a Cessna, you really do need to see buildings. You really do need to see vegetation, but you don't necessarily need to see the draw distance because you're not high enough to see it. So you can have that reduced down. You know, scenery complexity can come down a little bit if you're flying at 3,000 feet, or maybe it can come up because you want to see the complexity. I always set scenery complexity at maximum and then adjust the performance of it with this slider here. So for instance, if I'm flying in a city, I'll probably pop that down to low. Whereas if I'm out in the country, it can go up to medium. I don't really push this one past medium because the draw distance for me isn't a concern, because if I have weather programs put in that kind of, you know, obscure the distance, I'm never going to see that scenery anyway, and it's really wasting resources, so I just get rid of it. Obviously I don't have bathymetry enabled because we don't go underwater, and I have gone underwater and no one apart from P3D has actually realized a submarine or anything you can actually utilize. Like even P3D, they don't have cockpit textures as it were for a submarine. They only have what it looks like from the outside, and because it's that dark, you don't do that. And so I've tried to go underwater, but it's just totally not worth it. Nobody supports the underwater feature, which is a shame because I'm sure it would be awesome if somebody did. If somebody created a landscape under the water, I'm sure more people would use it and it would look just as awesome as the one in the air. But this is a flight sim, not a submarine sim, so I can understand why. So that's basically it. These profiles, they govern everything these checkboxes say and the sliders say, and you know, everything that your sim will load with. And depending on what I'm flying and where I'm flying will depend on what profile I use. Now, this combined with my graphics card settings and my monitor is how I achieve 30 frames per second. So as you can see on my main profile, I have VSync off, and that's because I'm running a 60 Hertz monitor. Now, if I try and run my sim at 60 frames to match the synchronization of the hertz of the monitor, I'm going to run into issues if I'm playing around with PMDG in New York. You know, my sim, my computer, my hardware is not going to be able to cope with high quality textures of New York City from Druzwecki Design with a PMDG aircraft and weather on top. It's just going to go, well, something's got to give, dude, you know? So what is it going to be? So what I tend to do is I tell my graphics card, listen, I'm running the sim at 30 frames, right? But my monitor is at 60 frames. Can you make up the difference? And with the adaptive half refresh rate setting on the NVIDIA card, it sort of makes up the difference between the two, and it syncs them up, as it were. And because 30 is exactly half of 60, it works, and it's great. and I have my target frames unlimited, so it always strives for the most amount of frames, but it's governed by the graphics card, which is set to 30 frames within the sort of my monitor, you know, the 60 hertz of my monitor. So therefore, my sim, no matter what, will maintain 30 frames a second locked. Like, it doesn't budge. Okay, now obviously if I start throwing in a lot of heavy stuff, it will start to go 28, 29, 30, and that's fine. It still bounces around. I've never seen it go as low as 24, to be honest. And that's when I haven't configured something, you know. So you can tweak as much as you like for experimentation purposes, but at the end of the day, I feel the more tweaking you do with the CFG file, with version 4.5 and the latest hotfix, the sort of more you've got to then tweak with it. If you just leave it alone, it will run nice. And that's what I do. I leave it alone and it runs beautifully. I think that's it for this video, guys. That basically is the one thing you can do to keep your sim running, no matter what your hardware configuration at 30 frames a second, no matter where you go. That combined with, you know, not loading everything in to your scenery library into your sim at the same time, you know, using your scenery library and unticking things that you're not going to use will save on performance, will save on load times, and will give you a much smoother sim performance experience for your flight, you know. So that's it. So P3D top 20 tips, or top tips 2020, sorry. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you how you can remove aircraft livery and sort of, you know, slim off the fat from your sim that you're not going to use. Like, you know, people, sometimes they give you like 30 different liveries. I only fly with like 2 or 3 liveries per plane. What about them other 25 liveries? What do I do with them? Well, I just delete them off. And I'm going to show you how to do that safely in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this one, and take care.